This is how it is looking in terms of who it thinks is going to finish inside that top four, which, as I mentioned, could be top five. Liverpool, obviously, then come Arsenal.
No.
Man City, 82.81%. Nottingham Forest, 40.81%. Merson,
No.
you got your hands in the air.
I have.
Come on.
We done this midweek, yeah, before Tuesday's games, and Fulham were 1%. Now they've gone down and they've just won at Wolves. How's that work? How's that work?
The other ones. It's the other ones playing into the computer's algorithms.
Oh, no.
It's only a computer, Merce. It's only a computer. I mean, Dawes, I want to come to you on this. Yeah. I mean, we'll talk in detail a little bit more about Nottingham Forest in a short while. But who for you makes up, if it does finish, a traditional top four for the Champions League? Do Forest remain in there?
I'd love to say yes, but I'm looking and thinking they've got City next week.
What's your head saying? I can tell what your heart's saying.
Yeah, I'm worried. I knew this was a big week for them. The games they had with Newcastle, Arsenal and then Man City, three Premier League teams that already beat them early on in the season, and it's come up that we've seen the two that they lost. Good point for them against Arsenal. It was good to stop the losing run, but I just think it's hard to get back on the way they play and to keep playing to that level. And you've got to remember where they were two previous seasons before, fighting for relegation. Even to be talked about in the equation to be challenging for Champions League football is remarkable. But when your players are playing to the maximum of their level for this long, and you just fall off with the amount of teams that are coming with a late run, I think it's going to be a real challenge. If they can get any kind of Europe, it will be remarkable. My outsider team is Brighton.
Brighton. OK, and we'll come on to them in a short while. Tim, just coming back to Arsenal, who sit in second at the moment, still very much in this season's Champions League. That draw, that blank against Nottingham Forest midweek. Listen, we've already talked about the injuries, and they have been absolutely significant, that is for sure. Yeah. But as a whole, have they regressed this season?
Oof. Difficult to compare, because we're talking about severe injuries to attacking players and a superstar in Saka. So for me, it's really hard to judge. I wouldn't be suggesting any changes to the hierarchy of management or anything stupid like that. What I'll be saying is that perhaps a recruiter must be looking a little bit harder.
But is one trophy in his 5 years in charge enough?
Yeah, you've had teams like Man City ahead of him and a manager like Pep Guardiola. So it's an unfair playing field. It's the same. You could ask the same for every team. I think they've definitely developed under Mikel. I wouldn't be making any knee-jerk reaction to get rid of him. I think you have to give him next year. You have to give him next year with a striker as well. So
I mean, that underlines what you're talking about, because 3 shots on target the last couple of games. Yeah. I mean, up top, they're bereft, and they're starting to look as well, with those key personnel missing, wasteful at times as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and any side would miss the attacking players that they're missing. And, you know, you watch them against Nottingham Forest, you watch them against West Ham, and they did struggle to break them down. Both those sides, you know, sat back and made sure that they were very tight and compact and made it difficult for Arsenal. So when you're missing those sort of players, you're going to miss players that are going to open up a packed defence like that, you know, that sort of spark, if you like. And you can see that Arteta is trying to find solutions. Against Leicester, he brought on Marino and he came on and obviously scored the 2 goals. He then started him up top and didn't quite work. You've got a midfielder playing, you know, as a centre forward. You've then got Trossard playing in the 9. You've got Sterling has played both sides. So he is trying to find those solutions. But I think when you're relying on a young man in Nwaneri who's 17 years old, lots of potential, but you just want to be bringing him in and taking him off. Sterling's not had that much football, so you're relying on players that Arteta wouldn't have wanted to have been at the start of the season. So I'm with Tim. I don't think you can judge him at this moment in time.
And Merce, once the post-mortem on this whole season eventually happens come the end of May, when they look back on it, absolutely, the injuries will be a key factor. But that decision not to invest, not to chase after a serious number 9 in the summer, and then an inability to land one in the January transfer window as well. Where will the blame for what's happened this season lie? Will it be a combination of those two things?
It's hard. I think at the start of the season, I think you can then say they probably needed an out-and-out centre-forward. I'm a big fan of Havertz, but, you know, I think he's better deeper than being the sole striker. I don't buy into the January one. I don't buy into the January one. There's not a lot around in January. Yeah, I mean, with the fair play rule now, you can't just go out and go, you know what, we'll buy him for 70 million, we'll take a chance. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll give them 200 grand a week. you know, 5 years ago, that didn't matter, did it? You could do that, and if it didn't work, you just move on in the summer and you go and buy someone else. That ain't the case anymore. Even though they've had their injuries, they're still a long way behind.
Yeah.
They're still a long way behind, you know, and this gap will get bigger. It won't get shorter. I'll be surprised if it got shorter by the end of the season. It will only get bigger. But if they finish second again, that's 3 years on the trot. I mean, there's consistency in a way, but they'll be disappointed that they could end up beating Man City. Because at the start of the season, their one thing in their head will be finish above Man City and we win the league.
100%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. And they could finish above Man City and not win the league, and that's where they'll be disappointed.
And there's been reports, Dors, emerging in the last couple of days from Sky Germany that there have perhaps been talks between Arsenal and Joshua Kimmich at Bayern Munich. He's had a contract at the end of the season. Arsenal denying that there's been actual talks. He's an answer, but he's not the whole answer, is he?
No, definitely not. You know, I think he's a very, very good player. He's done it for a long time in Germany at the age of 30. His contract's coming to an end. It doesn't look like he's going to be. It's been renewed. And the reason Arsenal are probably looking at this is because you go, is Jorginho going to go? Is Thomas Partey going to go?
Well, they're out of contract this summer.
Yeah.
It looks likely, doesn't it?
So then you go, we need to replace them. And if he's a free agent, then you go and you're getting the experience, the quality that he possesses, and you think, well, it's a no-brainer on that front. But I just think that they need a striker. I've said it for long enough now. Any team needs a striker. I don't care who you are. Manchester City won the Premier League with no striker. That was a one-off. It's I know Liverpool don't always play with the Nunes, but Jota falls to number 9 and different ways of playing. But I think that's where Arsenal need to prioritise. But Kimmich, I can see why they would go. Of course, the experience and what he can bring. If those two players do leave Arsenal, you're bringing one who's tried and trusted in no-brainer.
Shall we have a little chat about the title race in the Premier League? Because this time last week, Merson, you were sat here, you were watching your old team, Gunners, struggling, and in the end losing against West Ham. You were talking, and we felt, given that Liverpool had Man City to come and Newcastle United midweek, it might be a little bit early to be talking about open-top bus parades and booking the bus already. But it is now, isn't it, a question not of if, but when. For Liverpool.
What, they book it or what? Oh, sorry. I thought you meant when they book
We're going to get a film of you booking an open-top bus before the end of the season.
It's just a matter... It's how many points. How many points from now on? They've just got to stay concentrated, just got to keep on performing. They've been absolutely outstanding. You know, it will be being so professional because you've got the Champions League now in between, you know, 2 big games against PSG. They've just got to... As long as they tick along, they'll be all right. They can afford 3 or 4 free slip-ups and they'll be all right. But, yeah, they won't want that to happen. They'll want to keep on doing what they do. And, yeah, I've been outstanding. I think, you know, the Man City game won that comfortably, in my opinion, and then Newcastle as well. So, yeah, absolutely. I can't talk highly enough of them. I mean, that record. I'd done the game against Nottingham Forest here when they lost. And I thought, oh, my God, I wasn't impressed at all. I thought they're going to... could struggle here a bit.
Didn't they not learn a lot from that game? That low block, they were frustrated. They couldn't find an answer. But as the season has gone on, when teams have tried to do that again, they found a way around it. It almost came at a good time so early in the season. Yeah,
I think so. I think it did. I think the other thing was it was straight after the international break. You know, I think with Slot being in Holland, I don't think it's the same as the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? I think when you come back from a weekend, you know, in Holland, there's a massive gulf. Do you know what I mean? When you come back to the Premier League here, the lesser teams have got a good chance of beating you. It's a real leveller. And I think that taught him a lesson. I think it did. And I think it was one of them as well where that game was going nowhere. It was 0-0. And I thought the Wolves manager, Nunes, the Forest manager, done great, Nunes. At 60 minutes, he just went, you know what? I'm going to put on the wingers with speed, with Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. And they ripped them apart. Yeah. And I think he learnt there where... sometimes when it ain't going great, just be patient, do you know what I mean? And just take a draw here and there. But I think they've been absolutely outstanding. They've had a big advantage. They haven't had any injuries. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, the Rolls Royce at the back, Van Dijk's played every game. You know, Salah plays every game. You know, so that's a big thing.
But, Tim, despite that, you look at the last couple of weeks of Liverpool. I mean, as Arsenal's injury crisis deepened, and Mercy's absolutely right to point out on that front, they've been incredibly fortunate this season. But then you look at the 4 games, 11 points from 15 against Everton, Wolves, Aston Villa, Man City and Newcastle midweek. Is one of their greatest strengths this season, their relentless consistency.
Absolutely. We're talking about a group of players who have been there and done it and won the biggest trophies, you know, so they've got that calm head about them. got a fantastic squad of players. Let's have it right. I think the manager, the best thing he's done is not done a lot. You know, he's gone in there and kept it pretty simple. You know, it's not broken, so why fix it? So what he has done is made some happy players, you know, and he's tweaked it a little bit, grabbing Birch in that midfield area. Slobbersley has been absolutely magnificent for me, and McAllister in midfield. They've got so many options off the bench. He's finding a way of keeping everyone happy. You can generally do that as a manager when you win every football match, you know. And I think going back to the injuries one, I think we've got to give him a lot of credit for that as well. It's not always luck that you keep your players fit. Sometimes it's by design, what you're doing in training. And I think a lot of teams like Arsenal have been crippled with injuries. Tottenham.
If any Arsenal fans still held out hope after the weekend, that may have dissipated after the latest midweek fixtures in the Premier League. The Gunners could only draw 0-0 at Nottingham Forest, while having to wait and see if Newcastle United could do them a favour at Anfield. They could not. Liverpool eased to a 2-0 win over Eddie Howe's men thanks to goals from Dominic Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister to go 13 points clear at the top with 10 games remaining, albeit having played a game more, with Arsenal still having 11 to play. The significant 95.8% chance of sealing the title that Liverpool already had after their win at Manchester City on Sunday, according to the Opta supercomputer, has therefore risen further. Orange Slot's side now secure a 20th top-flight crown and second Premier League title in 98.8% of simulations. Arsenal's likelihood has dipped from 4.2 to just 1.2, meaning they only produce a mighty comeback to pip the Reds in around 1 in every 100 sims. Following Arsenal's shock home defeat to West Ham on Saturday and Liverpool's impressive 2-0 victory at Manchester City a day later, the gap at the top of the table is now 11 points. It's a seismic gap, even if Liverpool have played a game more. With 7 of the Reds' remaining 11 games at home, their lead looks unassailable. The Opta supercomputer agrees, giving Orange Slot's side a 95.8% of winning the Premier League title. That's up from 84.7% coming into the weekend. Arsenal's chances have cratered. Before this match day, the Gunners went on to win the title in 15.2 of Supercomputer's 10,000 simulations. Now it is just 4.2. For many, it was probably a given that Arsenal would do the business at home to West Ham on Saturday. After all, the Hammers' form had been unspectacular and the Gunners were unbeaten at the Emirates in the Premier League this term. But Arsenal slumped to a surprise 1-0 defeat thanks to Jared Bowen's 50th Premier League goal, with Miles Lewis-Skelly's red card hardly helping matters for Mikel Arteta's men towards the end. Beyond just the game, though, the result had greater ramifications. Victory for Arsenal would have moved them to within 5 points of leaders Liverpool, who face the tricky task of going to Manchester City on Sunday. As disappointing as City have been this term, the reigning champions raising their level for one game was hardly a thing of fancy. But now Liverpool have the opportunity to ram home their advantage, with Arsenal's loss having a pretty significant impact in the Opta supercomputer's season projections. Before the weekend, Arsenal went on to win the title in 15.2 of the 10,000 simulations. Liverpool took it in 84.7. Arsenal's chances plummeted by 51.1 as a result of the West Ham defeat, now only ending their title drought in 7.4 of the latest simulations. Liverpool's chances improved by the 9th of February or the 7th of July percentage points, going all the way in 92.5 of the most recent simulations. Arsenal will now be even more desperate for City to do them a favour on Sunday.